Hi, I'm Alan Dietz. I'm the director of the RSVP of North Central Washington. And thanks for coming to the Boomers and Beyond session. If you're here for Calculus 101, it's down the hall. You're going to be very surprised by the content here. It's my pleasure to introduce Michelle Hynes today. She's going to be the presenter. And I'm going to let Michelle expand on her biography. It's in the book if you want to read it. But just want to say that she has two passions and has, as a volunteer since childhood, had two passions. One is early literacy and one is food insecurity. And those are my two passions also. So I'm delighted to be a part of this. And thank you, Michelle, for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, at the end, this is the most important part, other than the presentation. If you go out that door at the end, I'll be standing there and I'll give you a raffle ticket for the drawing for this afternoon. If you go out this door, you're not going to get one.
Thanks, Alan. I think the raffle probably was the most important part. So, hello and welcome again to all of you, and welcome to those of you who are watching from afar. Thanks for coming. I'd like to start by getting a sense of who's here. So, could you stand up if you live and work in Oregon? Okay. Could you stand up if you, thank you, you can sit down. Can you stand up if you live and work in Washington State? Okay. Did anyone come from Alaska? No? No? Those folks are probably live streaming. Where else do we have people from? Just shout it out. Montana, California, Nevada, Utah. Okay, good group. You miss anybody? Hawaii, welcome. Came a long way. Many of you came a long way. Who is part of a foster grandparent program? How about RSVP? Ooh, lots of you. How about Senior Companion? Anybody from Senior Companion programs? Great. And do we have any AmeriCorps folks? Oh, a lonely little bunch, thank you. So let me tell you for just a minute about me, because it'll tell you why I'm presenting what I am going to talk to you about today. So I'm Michelle Hynes. I work at an organization called Encore.org. You might know us as Civic Ventures. And we're an organization that focuses on careers in later life, particularly people who are interested in making a career shift into education or healthcare or some other what we call second act for the greater good. So my perspective is largely framed by thinking about service and work in later life. I used to run a program called Experience Corps that places older adults as tutors and mentors in elementary schools, and its early history is actually rooted in the National Senior Service Corps. So it marries a lot of elements of Senior Corps programs with elements of AmeriCorps programs. And so my perspective is a little more framed by working on literacy programs and other education programs. You'll see there's a slight hole in my presentation where you might expect to see examples from Vet Corps, for example, and I'm relying on all of you who know that field better than I to talk a little bit about that. So let's get started. We'll pause along the way for questions. Everybody good? Yes. Yay. Okay. So can you hear me if I step out? Awesome. These photos are mostly of Purpose Prize winners, people who are social entrepreneurs in their 60s and 70s. So this is one of the programs that Encore.org runs. And we have beautiful pictures of them. So that they get to show up in slides quite a lot. John Gardner, who some of you may know, is one of our founding board members. And we often quote Mr. Gardner saying, "The nation today faces breathtaking opportunities disguised as insoluble problems." And I know that when we think about national service and older adults, we often think about huge challenges, but I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what the opportunity is. And you can see this in some of your handouts in the background materials. These are just the questions that we're going to talk a little bit about today. More agenda. So let's talk a little bit about life trajectory, childhood and beyond. We start out younger, we get older every day. And this is what the life trajectory used to look like. This is a traditional way of looking at the life trajectory. Here is something new that is happening for all of us. Most of us are in the midst of our careers. Everybody here in the midst of a career of some kind? Anybody already in something you would call retirement? Probably you wouldn't be at this conference. So there's this space that's opened up for a lot of... Sorry?
There was a couple.
Oh, good. Did I miss you?
Yeah.
Retired?
Yeah.
Encore? Okay, super. Here's another little quick fact that I'd like to know if you're willing. If you are in your 40s, stand up. And I'll raise my hand. I'm right in the middle of those years. If you're in your 50s, stand up. 60s? Come on, we're proud of you too. We're proud of it. People who are 60 and beyond. We have it beyond. Wow. Younger folks who I missed. Intergenerational? Yes, awesome. How many of you consider yourselves boomers? And if you're a boomer, stand up if you think you're going to retire by 65. Okay. So even in this room, you can see that there's beginning to be a shift in the demographics of our country. And if I asked you a question about economics, or we looked at some statistics about what has happened to economics for people in their 50s and 60s and 70s, we would see that people are continuing to work much longer than, let's say, our parents did. And so there's this space opening up that my organization calls the Encore life stage. It's a space between midlife, which I had trouble thinking this is where I am now, but I just turned 45, so I'm squarely in the middle of my life. Between midlife and old age, that's an extremely productive time of life where we're all still working and volunteering and taking care of kids still. Maybe we have kids in college, maybe we have grandkids we're taking care of. So this looks different than it used to. And we think of this time of life as being one that is marked by social contribution, if we're lucky, between midlife and old age. And I brought a couple of these books that have been written about this life stage. You can take a look at them at the end, if you would like. So the question I want to ask you is, given this change in how we're all living and working, what's the opportunity that this opens up for national service? Let's hear some comments. I'm going to start at this side of the room and make a sweep so that we don't miss anybody. Opportunities.
Widowhood.
Okay, that's a good one. Hang on to it.
I
Alan?
ran an AmeriCorps program for many years and had quite a few members who were in their 50s and 60s going back after having raised a family to earn an education award so they could go back to college.
Great. And so that's definitely an opportunity for those individuals. What was great about that for your program?
It gave us some great diversity to have people from their early 20s all the way into their early 70s be a part of the program. And we focused on childhood literacy.
Great. Anybody else? This cluster of tables? Opportunities? Okay, opportunities? Opportunities. Yeah, go ahead.
Opportunities to go back to work. I went back to work after raising my family.
Great, great. And there's, thanks for saying that, because I wanted to make sure to mention this report that came out. Did you see National Service Providing Pathways to Employment? Have people seen this?
Yep.
I'll leave this as an example too. National service can be a great way to help people bridge back to work or career shift. This mostly focuses on younger people, but it has a really great section on veterans. There was another comment over here. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
A new personal identity.
A new personal identity. Okay, great. And you mentioned widowhood.
Rediscovering yourself and doing what works for others after even when
Yep, a new sense of purpose after a death or another big life transition. We saw a lot of that for older women, particularly in Experience Corps. There was another comment over here. Go ahead.
Connected to that, there's a sense of courage. This is my time of life. It's not now, when, do or die. I've done it for everybody else. Now it's the time to do for me.
Yes, yes. There's a great book that came out a couple of years ago by a journalist named Abigail Trafford, and the title is My Time. So that's great. Comments here? Go ahead.
Some people have already said it, but a new opportunity to try something different that you've never done before that you wanted to try but didn't get to.
Yeah. So great comments, particularly for service members who are in this time of life. Any other comments about the opportunity that you see for your program? Why might you want to take advantage of what could be a windfall of talent?
One more thing.
Yes.
I think that the boomers that are coming into on our radar screen right now, we've talked about this a lot over the last several years, are younger than most of our Senior Corps volunteers. I think a lot of us have an average age like 75. And so the opportunity would be finding ways that we can engage and involve a younger generation of seniors.
Yeah.
And probably not going to be serving meals at the senior center. It's probably going to be something more where they can better use the life skills that they developed over their careers.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm with the Foster Grandparent Program, and I was with the program out east years ago, and I've noticed a gigantic shift in the people who apply as far as education level. I now have retired teachers, retired nurses, people who are professional that qualify for our stipend because their retirement isn't what they thought it was going to be, and the interest rates are so low that they qualify.
Right. So people who are very educated but more poor than they expected to be.
We have like pretty much half and half generational poverty and situational poverty. And in the old days, it was all pretty much generational poverty, and how we managed was a little bit different. Now half of our people are pretty much situational poverty, and there's studies about how to manage them. But I've noticed a lot more professionals that are in poverty level.
That's a really interesting shift. That is both an opportunity and a challenge. Yes.
I was just thinking too that as you were talking and referred to boomers as seniors, I felt a real jolt in my stomach. And it's like language is just really got to speed up. We've got to do something about our language and how we are speaking to this this new generation of people.
So that's a great point too. And when I was thinking about this presentation last night, I always have to sort of like relocate myself in like, what age are boomers now? You know, when I first started talking about this, there were 10,000 boomers turning 60 every day, and now there are 10,000 boomers turning 65 every day. But if you look at who the boomers are, 1964, those folks not eligible for Senior Corps yet. I was born in 1968, so that means that the youngest boomers now are 49. So when we talk about engaging boomers in service, and I think you said, you know, average age has been around 75, 49, right? Some of them can't even sign up. So that's also an opportunity, I think, for thinking about what's next, right? That hasn't hit us yet, but that is one of the things that's coming. So folks born in 1946, someone help me do the math. The oldest boomers are how old?
67. Well, they're 3 years older than me, so they're 67.
67. The oldest boomers are 67. So language is a big deal. A bunch of you stood up and said, I'll get you in 1 sec, okay. Thank you for persisting. A bunch of you stood up and said, yes, I'm a boomer, which is not a label that works for everybody, by the way, especially among communities of color. If you are a boomer and you would call yourself a senior, stand up.
That's the problem.
So a few of you. Does any of you who didn't stand up, do you have a great word for yourself? What do you say?
Experienced.
Experienced? Okay.
For sure.
Yep. So hold that thought, because we're going to see a little bit of that in the example. A couple people over here had comments, ma'am.
You're on the, you hit something right, the nail on the head.
Nail on the head.
Let's start over.
What I want to say is one of my seniors asked this question because we were all together, and she said, she asked another senior, because they're both in senior centers. She goes, what are you guys doing to recruit more people for your center? She goes, all of ours are dying off. And we're having our senior center is getting smaller. She goes, but the new senior, the people that we consider that are supposed to be in seniors, they don't want to join our group because they're very active. They're still cycling. They're doing things that most seniors would do before. Before, I guess seniors would, once you hit a certain age, you go to the senior center and learn how to crochet and play pinochle. And not this group.
Not the same. Hold on 1 sec. There was somebody else over here who I feel like I missed. Everybody's good? Okay, go ahead.
We have 3 centers that used to be called senior centers in Eugene, Oregon. One is now a community center, one is an adult activity center, and one is just a park and rec now. And the only group that's saddled with the word senior is the Senior Companion Program. And so we constantly have to explain, we can't change the name, but we're open to view. And we just talk about the age limit. We don't call it anything except for what we have to through the program.
Yeah, more neutral. Okay, so let's see some examples of what other people are doing. This is probably the oldest RSVP in the country in New York City. And this is an example of some of the programs that they're running as part of their RSVP now. And you can see that they hit a couple different priority areas for the corporation. Youth mentoring, a financial advocacy program, emergency preparedness, which has been a big issue in New York and New Jersey lately. And I love the intergenerational diversity of the photo and the hat. The hat is my fave. This, I wanted to pull an example from nearby. Is anybody here from Washington County?
My coworkers are the different group.
The language is going to be familiar to all of you about RSVP, but what I love about this is the tagline, service is ageless. This is the program that I ran for a while that is near and dear to my heart. It was acquired about 1.5 years ago by AARP, so more people all over the country will see it. This is an intergenerational literacy program, very focused on high need K-3 schools. Everybody works in teams, which is one of the strong features of the program in terms of reducing social isolation, particularly after life events like being widowed. And we see a lot of that in this program. This is a similar program in Arizona called Experience Counts. And again, somebody used the word experience rather than age. It's a very popular, attractive word. It really resonates with people. And again, like laughing together, intergenerational, great like school kind of color in the background, kind of draws you in. This is another program like Experience Corps that has its roots in the National Senior Service Corps. It's 15 or so years old. Started at the University of Maryland, has spread all over the country. It's primarily a senior companion type model, although they're an AmeriCorps grantee now, Legacy Corps. Again, legacy, experience, what do we value about this stage in life? This is a new program, Boomers Leading Change in Health, that started up in Denver maybe 2 years ago. And they have a couple different kinds of roles for people, helping families kind of navigate the healthcare system, giving them resources, providing different kinds of information to specific populations who are at high risk for certain kinds of illnesses. You probably have great examples that I missed. I know I missed great examples serving veterans, for example. I talked to someone before the session who's working with the Jumpstart using a foster grandparents model. So other things you would add to the list?
Senior Corps' tagline now, I think, is Lead with Experience.
Lead with experience.
We use that in some of our awards for RSVP.
Mm-hmm. Anybody want to give your own program a shout out?
I know one RSVP, and some are adopting it by using the RSVP and then saying ready, set, volunteer.
Awesome.
We use RSVP, your invitation to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that we like.
Other language or program examples? Go ahead.
I'm with an AmeriCorps state program, and people are always really surprised that we have individuals in their 50s and 60s in our program. We have kind of a mix. And we, it's Montana State Parks. AmeriCorps is a member serve at parks across the state, and they do outdoor education and things like that. But it's interesting to me that, you know, most of the people here are kind of associated with Senior Corps, and there really is this strong perception that AmeriCorps is for 22-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And my program has been really successful just for whatever reason. People, you know, who have had a career already are really interested in the program, and we really want to build upon that. But it's I don't know, it's interesting to think about how to kind of break people's perceptions about AmeriCorps isn't just, you know, again, for the 22-year-olds. So it's something we're doing, but it's something that, you know, the kind of hearing examples of how to talk about it is really helpful, because we want to try to educate people about it's not AmeriCorps kids, you know, it's
Yes.
bigger than that. So.
Yes, and this program is an AmeriCorps grantee under Encore service. This, like I said, it's AmeriCorps now. It started out as Senior Corps, as a kind of crossover. This is an AmeriCorps grantee that runs out of a hands-on partnership. And I've got a couple examples here of program, like position descriptions that you might like to have if you're trying to recruit this population for AmeriCorps.
So those programs that you showed, are those specifically for 55 plus, or are they available to a whole range of ages?
AmeriCorps, as you know, is any age, right? You can't restrict it.
But I mean, do they make people feel uncomfortable if they're 20, or is, you know what I mean? Is it only for 55 plus? Or?
So the point you made, and I'm just gonna make sure everybody can hear. The point you made is about marketing, and even though in Kennedy Serve America there is an Encore service provision, we have not seen a lot of change in the materials that are available and the support that's available for recruiting people who are in their 50s and 60s instead of in their 20s. So I feel like the programs that have designed Encore service opportunities are kind of leading the way in terms of marketing, and that's why I made the point that I did about the images that you see. I think some of it is really just about that. It's about language and about who you see in the marketing materials. So yes, I'm giving examples that were specifically designed for older adults.
But the programs themselves have a range of ages?
Some of them do. Like Legacy Corps has teens who are in foster care, for example, in addition to older adults. Some of them are intergenerational or multi-generational. Thanks. So, anything else to add from the floor? Jared, what are we hearing from outside?
No questions or comments yet.
No questions or comments. Okay, Alan, did you have a question?
Yeah, on our website, we're trying to target baby boomers again. And we say, you grew up in a turbulent time in our nation's history. You had plans to change the world. Don't retire your dreams. Put your experience to good use with us.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard like the generation who changed the world in the 60s is now turning 60, like a kind of a riff on that. So, let's talk about barriers, shall we? We were hopeful for a whole half an hour. And just to give everybody a little bit of a chance to talk, how about if you turn to someone next to you, you all have friends at your table, at least one, and make a little list. You've got Post-its, you've got paper, make a little list. So what's hard about recruiting boomers to serve in your programs? Everyone's like,
Right, exactly. Yeah, she talked about the age, and I think there's their time. The biggest message is they do things they're given a responsibility. Right. Or at least 6, 7. Right. And some of our volunteers, right? Or 19, sometimes they won't get more earlier. They have things that allow for that age what they did in the they're not going to do that. Well, and in which there's a conflict because they can't replace what somebody, and that's something that's better. Water 55 sweater is what I try to say. They want to do because they don't want to have right. And yeah, are they it's like, you know, it needs to have like word right, yeah. Right.
Hey, that's a lot of good conversation. Sounds like there's a lot of energy around this. Can I have you back? Raise your hand if you can hear my voice. Thank you. So, let's hear from some of you. A lot of energy around that. Let's do the sweep from side to side. Barriers.
The name.
The names. Okay, language.
Senior Corps, PCPL.
Yeah.
I said I have 2 big ones. One of them is all my low income. It's kind of hard separating the mindset of volunteer versus this is a job and the only income that they receive. That they really want more money, the funding is limited, the resources are limited. And then I work with a lot of international volunteers. 2/3 of my volunteers are from some parts in Asia and don't really speak English. And their mindset of elders and seniors is very different than the English American mindset. So kind of incorporating the program to a totally different mindset is really important.
So I don't know if everybody at this end of the room can hear, but she's talking a little bit about international and intercultural challenges. Does anybody else have that challenge in your program? Yeah, people who come from communities where being an elder means something really different. Okay, so when we get to problem solving, you might want to meet up with some other folks. Yes?
Because retirement age for Social Security is increasing to 66, many of the boomers are still working.
Yep.
So if they do volunteer, they want short term, give you a couple hours on a weekend, and give you projects that is meaningful.
Yeah. So because this is a really interesting policy point, because Social Security retirement age is increasing, full retirement age is increasing, more boomers are working longer. And so when they're looking for a volunteer opportunity, they want something short, they want something episodic, they want something that's a bridge. Yes.
I think mine are a lot of the program requirements of CNCS.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people want to volunteer however many hours they want, and they don't want to do 15, like senior companions. And a lot of people aren't meeting the age requirement or the income requirement.
Right.
So I have to turn people away because of CNCS requirements, and that's nothing I can change.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I feel like in terms of the income limits and the age limits, it's really important to know the demographics of your community. Like in your community, would you have to recruit 100% of the people who meet, like 100% of the people who meet the income requirement would have to be senior companions? Like there might be some structural things that you're bumping up against that, as you say, I mean, not anything you have control over. I'm gonna move to the middle, yes.
Boomer volunteers are starting to want a volunteer activity that's comparable to what they left in a job position. And that gets a little bit difficult because they can't replace a staff member, and it depends on how the volunteer station's structured.
So what you're seeing is people who have left some kind of career and want to continue to use the same skills. We talked a little bit earlier about people wanting to try out something new in this time of life, but sometimes people think, I'm a great writer, or I have a lot of marketing skills, or I'm a number cruncher. I'm really great at Excel spreadsheets, and I want to help you by using those skills. But the non-displacement provision can be a little tricky. Other challenges? Go ahead.
We were talking about there seems to be, in a generalized sort of way, a real distinction between the current folks we're working with and the older folks that we were working with, in that the older folks have this real sense of giving back that the younger folks, like me, we want to know what's in it for us. We want to know. I keep hearing from people, well, how am I going to put this on my resume, even though they're not going to be going for they're not planning to go for other jobs.
So you're seeing really different motivations for the different age cohorts that you have. Go ahead.
I still don't feel like boomer volunteers are all that plentiful. I think that when they retire, they kind of have their own agenda and things they want to do, and until they tire of doing that, they don't come to ours.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I find that when I have younger people that go into one of our volunteer stations are a little startled when they look really young, and they don't get the automatic respect that our older people do. People don't open the doors for them, and the kids might not be as respectful because they're not the white-haired grandpa and grandma that they're normally expecting to see.
Interesting. So that the comment was that when boomers show up at a volunteer station, they don't look the way that the supervisor or the peers expect. They expect like a lovely white-haired grandma, and instead they get someone who looks more like me. And they're not received in the same way. Yes?
Two things. There's definitely having generations of older adults working together they have different work styles. So whether it's cultural, there's also just how you work together. So if I have my younger volunteers working with my older volunteers, sometimes they don't like approaching things the same way. And then going back to the financial needs, I've had a lot of volunteers quit because it's not paying them what they need it to pay them, and leave to find actual work. And because they're still in that able to work age, I'm losing a lot of volunteers based on their financial needs.
Right. So people who are looking for income support from the program are likely going to stay in it for a shorter time than people who have other ways of supporting themselves, and I think that is a challenge. Someone at this table? Yes.
Yeah, another barrier was that that generation, they're like that sandwich generation.
Yes.
They're taking care of their adults,
yes.
Their parents, but also maybe their grandkids.
Right.
So they basically say, I'm too busy, doing this.
Right. The sandwich generation challenges are huge for boomers. They are, we talked about how old are the oldest and how old are the youngest. Somebody who is 67 is likely to be taking care of an aging parent, and that's likely to get more challenging for him or her over time. And they're just as likely to be simultaneously taking care of one or more grandkids if they live near their family. Yes.
Also, lack of flexibility in terms of when programs are available to boomers. If they work a traditional work week and the offices are providing services during that time, or that's when they provide the supervision or whatever, then you need to have weekends and you need to have evenings where they can participate in activities. And it would depend on what the program is and how it operates, but that might be too.
Right. Yep.
We have an online comment?
Yes, an online comment.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Jane from Forest Grove here in Oregon says, regarding this exercise about what's hard about recruiting boomers for our programs, there's hostility from older volunteers who are not boomers to these newcomers. Sometimes it's a subtle hostility, sometimes it's blatant.
So, intergenerational hostility, right? The other thing that we notice when we look at people born between 1946 and 1964, you're looking at me and you're looking at my mom, right? Or, some variation of that. So has anyone handled this successfully in your program? Maybe you could step up to the mic so the online folks can hear you. Go ahead.
I have young, I have old, I have foster grandparents whose parents would be, their parents could be in our program. I had a lady come in for in-service for the first time, a boomer, and an older volunteer comes up and says, well, I'm sorry, sweetie, but you're in the wrong room. and I also noticed that and I warn my younger ones that I do have older ones, but I also tell them that those older ones started as younger ones. And that, they could actually be there for 20 years also. I know my younger ones clustered together, and they sit in the back.
Interesting.
They always sit in the back.
So does anyone, when I listen to this comment and this question, I think, does anybody have social opportunities or work opportunities that really encourage mingling?
Yeah, my name's Alicia. I work in Missoula, and I get to host the in-services for our foster grandparents and senior companions. And a lot of times we do them together because it's more fun when you have a bigger group. But I do have a task force of 6 volunteers that assist me with in-services, and we've done a lot of what we call team building, where they are cliquey. So we assign tables that people have to sit at, and then we'll just do chat sessions, kind of like speed dating. And that's been really fun. And I noticed that the volunteers really like it. The volunteers, the task force will, have them draw like a number and they have to sit at that table. And they don't really like that at the beginning, as you can imagine. But once they start talking and have their coffee, we do evaluations and the scores are pretty high. It works pretty well. And I think you could do that with one program as well if it's large enough.
Great. So, Jared, could you hear that?
Yeah. But we have another comment too, if you're curious.
I am. We all are.
Mary Sue, California says, talking about barriers, the biggest one she sees is training our partner agencies on how to use boomers' skills the way they appreciate it.
That's awesome. So we had a comment earlier about people wanting to use their skills from an earlier career, and the concern was about the potential displacement of a current worker. There's a program that Encore.org runs that I didn't mention because it's not quite a national service model, but it's a fellowship program that helps people transition from the tech sector, piloted in California, from the tech sector into the nonprofit sector. And often you may have boomers coming to you who have skills that they want to use that nonprofit organizations could not normally afford. So if you have somebody who can give you 10 hours of evaluation assistance or 10 hours of marketing assistance, a lot of you have mentioned marketing and language challenges, and you can't change Senior Companion, but can you use the branding and use some other language when you recruit, for example? Am I going off track from the online question? Can you say it again?
Yeah. Sorry, there's quite a bit of chatter online.
Excellent.
Which is good, yeah.
So the point that I'm trying to make is that I think the win-win in this situation is to figure out what are the needs that could be met in the work site or the host agency that could really benefit from the skills of someone who wants to continue in whatever career. Now, you don't want to replace your data entry person, obviously, or your receptionist or some core staff, but I bet that most of you have things you wish you could do that you can't afford to buy, or that you can't afford to buy enough of, and those roles can often be shaped as something that an experienced volunteer could do for you. Can somebody think of an example?
With designing your website, we have a volunteer that does our website. She's awesome.
Great. And is she RSVP or
she's an RSVP volunteer, and she does that as volunteer time. However, then she also has her own little private business, so the managing is a little stipend pay, but it's so much below the market average, and her work is above what we could afford for.
Great. Yes, in the back.
I work with Senior Companion Programs, and I have a Navy vet that goes and recruits veterans for me.
Okay.
So that's a really good network.
Great. The messenger matters. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a program, an RSVP program in California that an initiative is called the Know-How Network, and that's what I specifically do is place retired professionals at nonprofit agencies just in requested areas that nonprofits want and have needs for. So not only do we do traditional direct service volunteering placement, but we also have a whole area where we place professionals in where, and I have such a high right now, the requests are higher than the available volunteers.
Great. Let's have one more. You in the back, in the red shirt.
Grant writing.
Grant writing.
I don't have anything going on with that right now. I'm fairly new at RSVP, but I have noticed that I have some volunteers that can write grants, and our nonprofit sites or stations where we have volunteers. Sometimes having a grant writer would be an appealing thing. I haven't gotten into ClickPoint yet, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
There's an organization in New York called Reserve that had a program for a while that was explicitly training experienced adults as grant writers. And you might see if it still exists or if the training still exists. Reserve, like serve again. Reserve. I think that Coming of Age in Philadelphia might do something similar. So there's a ton of comments and questions, and I want to give you a chance to talk to each other again for a little bit, because it's a big room, and I know I'm missing things that people want to say. So I think everybody's got a few copies on your table of this handout. And I want to actually skip to the end, because we've got a lot of great best practice examples out, but I think that maybe we haven't done as much problem solving as might be helpful to you. So at the end, I've got a challenge for individual reflection and small groups. What do you think about challenges or barriers related to engaging boomers or other older adults in national service roles? Do they relate to, and so I had given a couple examples in terms of best practices. Do they relate to how you engage service members? Do they relate to serving a community need, which we've talked about a little bit here? Do they, we haven't talked a lot about grants management, but do they relate to how you define your performance measures and therefore what's acceptable and trackable? Or do they have to do with marketing? We've talked a lot about marketing challenges. At your tables, try out solving a problem that someone has, right? Like, do you want to solve an intercultural communication problem? Do you want to solve how could we talk differently about this program so that we attract different people? How can we evaluate our success differently and communicate our success differently? So take a couple minutes and pick a juicy problem from your table and see what help you can offer. I know you can do it.
I think the needs.
How you market that, yes.
If you're watching from elsewhere, you can try this out. You just won't have problems all the time. I'm sorry.
Market it as something else.
You might hear
because
things
we
here
have
that
requirements
will help
that we
you too.
need to use that. I mean, that Senior Corps stamp or whatever. And that's what's difficult on our website when we're just getting started. We use the RSVP experience and then we have a little slideshow and then we just put a tagline making a difference. And just hoping that they'll connect, I can make a difference. And that's what we're trying to do. Kind of like art did. That's what art did.
Okay, fabulous. Experts. Raise your hand if you can hear me. Raise your hand if you can hear me. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Hello. Hello. Okay. I don't really like this question. I know that now you've solved all the problems that you came into this room with, or at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least a dozen of them. So I heard some pretty vibrant conversations going on. Does this group want to tell us more about what you talked about?
Well, we decided that I work with the foster grandparent senior companion program.
Would you mind coming right here?
Sure.
You seem like a great public speaker. Go for it.
I'll do my best. We decided I need to call RSVP and sign up to be a volunteer station manager, create a job description, find a male vet who's willing to go out and do public speaking to recruit for foster grandparents and senior companions.
So what's the problem that you were trying to solve?
Oh, I'm sorry. The problem is we need more men.
More men.
Yes.
Okay.
We need more men. So finding that kind of that task force leader, someone who can go out and address men, and in particular with the Senior Companion Program, I know we just opened a VDHCBS, so it's waiver for vets. So we're looking for male, I know for me, I'm looking for male veteran senior companions to serve veterans.
Okay, super. And
so
you're
using
from Missoula,
RSVP.
Montana.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, let's hear from another problem solver. Go ahead, stand up.
I have gone to an American Legion during one of their meetings, asked if they would mind if I came in, and gave a little presentation on RSVP and asked for, obviously they're all veterans there, that's why they're there, asked for a volunteer to help do exactly that, help to get other men volunteers that are veterans to
Great. And what do you
volunteer.
want men to do? Why do you want more men? What's the benefit?
Well, we're trying to find veterans that are willing to be bus drivers for a DAV small bus driving veterans to and from their doctor's appointments.
Great.
To the VA doctors and hospitals.
Great. So more men who are veterans to drive vets to medical
They
appointments.
relate better with each other.
So relationship and the task that's needed. Super, thank you. Anybody from online, Jared?
There's a comment from, and I hope I pronounced your name right, Nuri Ye from Wyoming, who said, she asked, what are some of the things that make it hard to volunteer with AmeriCorps? Sure, we can direct them elsewhere, but it would sure be nice to keep them in AmeriCorps.
I believe I've seen Nurie's name on lots of AmeriCorps social media. Hi. So is it a comment?
Yes.
So it's hard to keep boomers specifically in AmeriCorps, or is it more general than that?
Looks like more general.
Okay, so challenges keeping folks in AmeriCorps. We have a couple of AmeriCorps people here. Did anybody speak to that challenge in your small group? No. Okay. Sorry, we can't help with that one today. Another problem solver who'd like to tell us what problem you were trying to solve and what you decided to do. There was a lot of good energy.
I just had a comment on Alicia's. It just occurred to me, if you're trying to get older men, you go where the older men are. And in my experience, they're hanging out in the coffee shops at Target, and Walmart, and McDonald's, and at least they are in Montana.
Okay.
They all go together for coffee, these little unofficial groups.
Yeah.
And if you could make table tents, at least to start, see if the business would put table tent information on those tables, then you've got an older guy sitting there with his coffee reading it. Or
so Target, Walmart,
McDonald's,
any place where they can gather for coffee together. Robert has a comment, and you're a man of a certain age.
Yes, I am. And first of all, hello, Mary Sue. It's nice to have your comments from where you are. In California, they're playing basketball at the Y.
Okay. Okay. So different demographics. You do find gathering places. Does anybody live in Northeast Portland besides me? Anybody here? No. I volunteer at the Senior Center on Monday mornings, and there are 4 men who all show up before the place opens at 8 o'clock and have breakfast together. And they'll do whatever you ask them to. Haul tables around, chairs, but they really come just to see each other. So that's a great comment. Other problem solvers? Well, did you all decide like what you were going to do after? Go ahead.
Well, we've talked about several areas, but one of them we just talked about was getting those of different age groups, different generations, to do an activity at the table, even just to talk about commonalities, you know, whether or not they grew up with grandma's recipe having vinegar in it and they come to find out it's because they couldn't afford blah blah, you know, just something that across the board will bring out a commonality amongst the group so that they can see that, you know, life has changed a lot, but there's some great stories that go with it, and it helps to kind of bond the group. You know, when you can do those kind of activities, when you know that something like that's going to be going on. There's a lot of activities that can do that.
Yeah, so creating commonality or learning something you don't know. There are these, at the same Senior Center I just mentioned, there are 2 older African American women who come in. There's a mother and a daughter. And anytime we don't know what something is, we distribute food, we distribute fresh food. Is this mustard greens or turnip greens? What do you do with this root vegetable I've never seen? They always know. So they're super popular. I wait for them to come in. I'm like, what's that? And then they tell me. Other comments? Questions that came up that you couldn't answer. Problems that were too sticky to solve in 10 minutes. I'm sure there are plenty of those.
Well, in my particular area, I have plenty of people who are willing to volunteer that are boomers, but they're not interested in signing up as part of a national program.
Interesting. So you have plenty of boomers who are willing to sign up to volunteer, but they don't want to be RSVP or be senior companions. Do you know why?
Yeah.
Enlighten us.
Well, it's not I live in a place where politics are very to the left, and RSVP has a stigma about it for a lot of people that's sort of too much nationalism, too much federal government, you know, on the left side of being against the federal government.
So you have kind of a branding and identity challenge. Yeah. Let's see. Solutions. Are there any programs of the federal government that this particular population appreciates, but that they might not recognize as being supported in that way?
Probably national
Medicare.
parks.
National parks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Medicare, yeah.
Medicare? So, it's a really great question, and I wonder if anyone else lives in a community where this is true, that people are, the federal government is not your friend. Raise your hand. Okay, this is a reality for a lot of people. How do people deal with this in terms of signing up for national service? Any good solutions? Okay, we all have the problem. But like national parks is a great example. Like, is there a way, so this is the way I would frame the question, is there a way of framing the idea of national service in the same way that we frame the idea of national parks? Right? If you believe that this is a resource that should be available to everyone or that you think is a common good, can national service be framed in that way?
Well, you know, one thing, just recently because of the shutdown, I think a lot of people became more aware of how much the federal government does provide for us. But that's getting a little political.
Yes, it's tricky.
You know, I would just, thinking about what I would do in that situation, but now is this a rural area, coastal? Okay, so that might be kind of, but trying to just go to the outcomes and trying to talk about what's going on for the people and the difference that we're making locally in the people's lives, and try to get away from that. Yeah. You know, like where I kind of talk up the national movement and that they can be part of that. From where I am, that seems to work pretty well. But I think that would be the only thing that I could think about is maybe trying to personalize it at a local level.
Yeah,
that may
can
not
it
work
be
at all.
localized? Can it be patriotic? I mean, but you are still going to run up against the problem of there is a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of stuff that you're tracking, and some of it can't be behind the scenes. Some of it is information that people have to provide, and that can be a barrier. And I know that it's, in programs that I've run, it's been a barrier for some older adults also, older adults who weren't born in this country, older adults who were born in, let's say, the rural South. Like, this is a challenge that would be an interesting one for people to talk about in some depth, I think. I don't have an answer, but I recognize that it happens in some different ways. Go ahead.
With my cultural volunteers, from their backgrounds and their home countries, they're very hesitant to government. So I have volunteer stations where they go to their cultural community centers where they feel comfortable, and the leaders are from their own country, and that's how I relay information. So they see me as the government. They don't like me. They think I'm the government, which I'm not. But if I relay the information to these volunteer stations and they're those community leaders, something they're comfortable with, an atmosphere they're comfortable with, they take the information a lot easier.
Yeah, so just like people have said, you know, we're using veterans to recruit other veterans, or we're using veterans to take folks to medical appointments, to really, you know, have a messenger from that community or a situation that the person can enter that feels a little bit more familiar and comfortable for him or her. And I don't know what that might be in your situation. Let's hear, is there anybody who has his or her hand up who hasn't spoken? Jared, let's hear from the field.
Yeah, we've got Mary Sue from California again. She says she always shares with new volunteers that the feds won't get their names, but their service will be added to those of so many others, and show that older people aren't just collecting Social Security or Medicare. She also says, you can tell Bob that he and my other SoCal peeps can lead the state, but they can't get away from you.
We already knew that, Mary Sue.
Okay, in the back.
Well, when we first started recruiting, we were emphasizing for RSVP the benefits of, you know, the insurance and the mileage and joining the 400,000 strong group, and we weren't having much success. But when we changed it, started focusing on this is how it's helping the community, and this is why you need to turn that timesheet in, because we're documenting the hours, it's bringing money back into our community. This is how it's helping, and became more specific on the impact of what that job was. Then people were willing to turn in the timesheet and sign these on.
Yeah, so that's a really great point. Boomers as a generation are achievement oriented, they're outcome oriented, they're accomplishment oriented. So you can get supplemental liability insurance, not usually a big selling point, although they can also be risk averse. Or like some programs I know can't afford to give transportation reimbursement anymore, so that used to be a benefit, particularly for lower income older adults. That's not a benefit anymore. But being able to say that you've accomplished something important with other people is often a motivating message. Yes?
My two predecessors, and I've run into it, have said that one of the things they've run into is that people will say, as a Christian community, this is what we should be doing anyway. Claiming hours would be detracting from the fact that we should be doing good. So they'll do the work, but getting the hours out of them is where they get challenged.
Right. So another cultural challenge, a community that sees that one aspect of giving that's important is to give without getting back.
No accolades.
Or to give
They
without
don't want
accolades.
They don't want their
So that's also
back.
an interesting cultural challenge.
They'll do the work.
It'd be nice if we had a system too that could make it easier to report hours. That's what I come against, is that, you know, this paper business is so archaic in so many ways, and if everybody had an ID number that they could just plug in when they arrive somewhere, it's just automatically tracking, plug it in, plug it out, and it you know, there's systematically, I think it's also not functioning.
Yes. Go ahead.
As far as the Christian aspect and just volunteering in general, while it does feed your soul, this isn't exactly just about you. You're helping others, and when you turn in your volunteer time, it does eventually help funnel more money towards senior programming, because it keeps our programs going, and other people can use those numbers for different things. So,
Right. And so what
the
would
big
be,
picture.
yeah, absolutely. So what's a way that is culturally sensitive and appropriate, and where that message can be heard, that says what you're saying, which I think, you know, we all know and believe. From this side of the room over here, comments, questions, affirmations? We're getting close to the end of our time. We have a couple minutes before Alan does more fabulous public service announcements to close us out. So I want to make sure, Jared, that we hear from anyone who wants to be heard, who's not in the room, and anyone who hasn't spoken, who was trying to get a word in edgewise. Jared, anything? Nothing new.
On the what's in it for me thing, have you all seen the, in Southern California, we have a presentation that we've all looked at that talks about the physical benefits of volunteering. Have you all seen that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, longitudinal studies show that if you volunteer, you live longer and you're happier and more active, blah, blah, blah. I think that's information we should be sharing with all of our, particularly our senior volunteers.
There's a ton of great health and wellness outcomes research that's been done, particularly by a woman named Nancy Morrow Howell at Washington University in St. Louis. She studied OASIS, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a national program that both provides learning opportunities for older adults and volunteering opportunities. She studied Experience Corps from the older adult health outcomes perspective and the literacy outcomes perspective. Does anybody know, have there been studies done specifically on some of the newer vet programs, engaging returning vets? Is there evaluation that's been done yet? It's a younger priority. Okay. Anything else that people wanted to ask or comment on?
I just wanted to know, what was the name of that person that she said, Nancy?
Nancy, and she has a hyphenated last name, MORROW HOWELL. She's at Washington University in St. Louis. She's a professor in the School of Social Work. Questions, comments?
I have a question.
Public service announcements. Yes.
Would you recommend any particular resources in, putting together a grant application that wants to highlight the importance of harnessing baby boomers in national service? Are there some resources that you would point out?
So I would definitely look at Nancy Morrow-Howell's research.
Okay.
She's done a lot, and some of it is specific to, it's all specific to older adults and some of it is specific to national service. I think that depending on the population that you're looking at, this providing pathways to employment that I called out, the veterans piece is important. National service. I would look at some of the work that AARP has done on reimagining work. And the work that Kyra Escape is doing, I know that she is presenting now and also at tomorrow's luncheon plenary. She's a good resource also, her reimagining service work. She and I have talked a bunch.
Who is it again?
Kyra Escape. And you can call me. I've written a gazillion national service applications focused on this population. Only 6 actually, not 8. That's gonna be
That's a lot.
Other comments, questions, public service announcements for the group?
Bob mentioned something about, is there a video about the physical benefits of volunteering?
No, but I have a PowerPoint on it. So, and
The corporation has a big study on their website on the health benefits of volunteering.
Yes, they do.
Big
They
study.
do. Thank you. Their research and evaluation team has done some good work.
And there's a lot of little
at
factoids like volunteering is better for longevity than taking a baby aspirin every day and things like that. So.
The other thing that, I don't know, maybe people don't know, when you're looking for resources and statistics to cite, thank you very much, Alan, that was my 10-minute warning. Erwin Tam, who's the head of Senior Corps now, was one of the principal researchers for the Experience Corps research at Johns Hopkins. So, it's a little incestuous, but, it's really great to cite the Experience Corps Baltimore research when you're looking at health outcomes for older adults, because the guy who had Senior Corps now, he made it happen. And, you probably know he's both a veteran and a practicing gerontologist still, so geriatrician, sorry. Other questions, comments? Okay, that was the 10-minute wrap up. So I want to give Alan a chance to, promote the raffle. Say anything you want to say.
I'll do that. But I also want to thank Michelle for a wonderful presentation. I know as someone who runs an RSV program in a conservative rural area, this we have, I think, some special challenges in recruiting volunteers, and this is giving me a lot to think about. So thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be at this door down here handing out raffle tickets to drawings at 4:45 today. I understand there are a lot of bottles of wine that were donated. Just saying.
Hey, thanks.
The raffle ticket is showing up.